All right, folks. 7 months have passed since the ceremony is actually going to begin on March 2nd. So technically, after 7 full months, we will finally get the winners of all 23 categories on Oscar Sunday this Sunday night. I don't know why I stated that, and the last time at the moment that we will have 23 categories, because of course next year 24 will come back with the new best casting category, unless they discontinue the original song category after this year, but I don't think that's not going to happen. So yep, it is now time finally for me to predict my prediction for the 23 winners for the 97th Annual Academy Awards that will be taking place this Sunday. We have now gotten all of the winners. Obviously, Oscar voting ended this past Tuesday, so one thing to note is that, obviously, even though we just had the Independent Spirit Awards and the Screen Actors Guild Awards, a lot of those influential wins are not going to help much because it's kind of too late for them. Maybe a little bit for the BAFTAs, because the BAFTA winners were announced 2 days before Oscar nominations closed, but there have been a lot of key aspects when it comes to the BAFTAs and the guilds. And got to remember how much the BAFTAs really did match with the Oscar winners last year, except for visual effects, and obviously not counting the shorts and original song. So how much does the BAFTAs got it correct? Did the guilds got it correct, like PG and DGA? Or did SAG and WGA? Or we couldn't see, because obviously we now have a hint that we are in a 2v2 race between the PGA, DGA, and Critics' Choice winner and Independent Spirit Awards winner versus the BAFTA and SAG Ensemble winner. So, with that said, it is now time for me to predict all 23 winners in the order of this year's Oscar nominations announcements, as I always do. So, of course, with Boeing Yang and Rachel Sennett they did, I'm going to go through that order, of course. Starting with Best Supporting Actor, Kieran Culkin in his lead performance. Even though you would think it would be a little bit tough for Culkin since A Real Pain is not in Best Picture. And the last time a movie that has one supporting actor that didn't get a picture nominee was Beginners back in 2011 with Christopher Plummer. So Culkin would be the first person since Plummer for Beginners to win supporting actor without his movie getting in for Best Picture. Best Costume Design, Wicket. I don't think that needs any explanation. Best Makeup and Hairstyling. This one would probably be kind of a little bit questionable, but I am still saying the substance. But the thing about it is, with the Best Actress category, of course, because obviously this category has been now more of the key of what could win an acting prize, as we saw for the past 3 years with The Eyes of Tammy Faye, The Whale, and Poor Things. But here's the scenario. If Wicked wins Makeup and Hairstyling and the substance doesn't for this category, then we might know what might happen. I'm going to talk about that when we get into Best Actress, but I'm still going to say the substance. Best Original Score is a toss-up, I would say, between The Brutalist and Conclave. Where Conclave is right now, if they do want to give it an additional win other than screenplay and film editing, this could be the one to do it and give Volker his second Oscar. But that would kind of be a little bit late on the voting, and since it's kind of too late, I think they're going to go in the BAFTAs and give it to The Brutalist. For Best Live Action Short, it's, I would say, a toss-up between Alien, Anuja, and The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent makes the most sense, as it is not also the only one that is a biopic short, but also did win a prize at Cannes. Anuja is kind of a possibility with the subject matter, and even though she is not nominated, Mindy Kaling is a producer on Anuja, and she just recently got a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, even though there are a lot of, the internet is kind of divided with her in the industry, specifically Velma, but she's not if she was nominated, I would have gone with Anuja, but since she's not, I can't say that. But, with what's been going on lately, and of course, what could be happening at one of the big themes when it comes to the show, on basically Hollywood versus President Donald Trump, and with the subject of the immigration status, Alien is probably going to be my vote. Best Animated Short is probably the easiest one here, after winning both the BAFTA and the Annie Award, with winning the Annie Award when two of the other shorts that are nominated here were also nominated the Annies. I think Wander to Wonder is going to have a great season for itself. Best Adapted Screenplay, this is guaranteed going to be Peter Strawn for Conclave. However, I will state this. If Conclave does not win Best Picture, the big sign would be if it loses to, I would say, Nickel Boys, because Nickel Boys obviously did win the Writers Guild without Conclave being ineligible. And another thing is, it is rare nowadays for a movie to win screenplay that is not written by their director. And since Edward Berger is not a writer on Conclave, they could give it to Nickel Boys, since Ramel Ross, the director of the film, is a co-writer on Nickel Boys. But I feel like Conclave, with winning the Golden Globe, the Critics' Choice, and the BAFTA, I feel like, and with the SAG Ensemble, I think it's easily going to take this one. Best Original Screenplay is an open-air slot between Anora, A Real Pain, and The Substance. Anora won the Writers Guild, The Substance won Critics' Choice, and A Real Pain won a BAFTA, even at the Independent Spirit Awards. But Anora and The Substance were not at the Spirits for Screenplay, and The Substance was ineligible at WGA. So with all three of them not really together except for Critics' Choice and the Globes, which they all lost to Conclave, and at BAFTA, it's just like, it is going to be kind of a massive question mark. Now, this could be a way to give Coralie Farjad a win, because she is not winning director or picture. A Real Pain could now be more likely now winning two of the big industry prizes with BAFTAs and technically with the Spirit Awards, but again, without Anora and The Substance being in there. But the thing about it is, and obviously Eisenberg is also the director of his own movie, but the thing about it is, the last time a movie we have not seen a non-picture nominee win this category. The last time you would have to go all the way back in original screenplay, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind back in 2004, beating The Aviator. And the last time you saw on the adapted side was Gods and Monsters all the way back in 1998. That's kind of a rarity. So, and I think because if it did got the Triple Crown, if it did win SAG, I would have easily stated. But I am still going to say, since I feel like since if we look at the past, most of the Palme d'Or winners, with Parasite and Anatomy of a Fall winning this, it didn't happen for Triangle of Sadness, but I do think Sean Baker will win this for Anora. Supporting actress, Zoe Saldana in her lead performance. I mean, that's, even though many people are trying to say Emilia Pérez should go 0 for 13 because of all the hate the movie has been getting, but I would not be surprised something else here about, not specifically with Saldana or anything like this, but with two lead performances actually going to be winning for supporting, I would not be surprised if, like, days after the Oscars, or even a day, that there's going to be a lot of general people that will complain about award shows giving lead performances the win for supporting. Like, all four of the acting wins are leading, with two of them being category fraud. Like, they could really bring up a category fraud issue with award shows, and it's just like, it's like how kind of ridiculous it has been going on for many generations. Like, this is not just like with this decade, but even like back in the early days of the Academy, and it's just like you go back to like the 50s or 60s and stuff like that with a lot of category frauds. They still happen every decade, and almost most of the time every year. And the fact that we have 3 lead performances in supporting and 2 of them are going to take the win, it's just insane that there might be some discussion about should award shows should change this, and or specifically movie studios, because movie studios are the ones that are making the decisions of who's leading and who's supporting, and not award show officials, which I think that should be the change. Award show officials, like the actors branch of the Academy, should make the decision of who's leading and supporting, and not by the studios, FYC ads. Best Original Song, the third time ever in the Academy's history that we're not going to see none of the songs nominated perform on the ceremony. Even though you have, like, Elton John and, like, obviously the Diane Warren song, and, of course, Like a Bird, and even you would make sense with Selena Gomez, but since Carlos Sevilla Gascon does sing in our winning song, El Mal, it's not going to happen, and this is the only way to give Jacques Audiard his Oscar as well. And since it won both the Critics' Choice and Globe, it's going to happen. Unless, I know some people are thinking if The Journey wins this category, that would just be hilarious. But the thing about it is, if I would not be surprised if they do give this to Diane Warren. I would not be surprised if the Academy announced they're going to discontinue original song, especially the backlash with the Emilia Pérez thing, even though it is an original musical. But, well, it's going to be very odd to see where they're going to present it, because they usually have song presented as like the fifth to last category, but now with none of them performing, I would not be surprised if they have it earlier or midway through the ceremony. But here's one of the open-air question marks, Best Documentary Feature, where it's a toss-up between the Israel-Hamas or Israel-Palestine War documentary, No Other Land, versus the Ukrainian-Russian War documentary, Porcelain War. Because No Other Land lost the BAFTA, but it did win the Spirit Award, but the voting already happened, and Porcelain War won the Directors Guild. Now, the question is, how much of Hollywood is against No Other Land, even though the movie is made by both somebody from Israel and from Palestine doing this movie together. And then, of course, you have Porcelain War, a movie that a lot of Americans more sympathize, because that's the thing, because, like, guaranteed a lot of Ukrainian voters voted for Porcelain War. A lot of Jewish people probably maybe voted for No Other Land, or not. That could also debate with some Palestinian or Muslim voters as well. Now, it would make sense to go with Porcelain War because it did want something prior to the Oscars voting close, but it just, like, I don't know, because many people think it's not as good as 20 Days in Mariupol, even though we all agree that we do support Ukraine without a doubt, except for Trump. I'll go into that. You know what? I'm just going to go with the safe bet and say No Other Land. If it's Porcelain War, I would not be that surprised. Best Documentary Short. There are actually 3 shorts here that really could bring in a message to Donald Trump, especially Death by Numbers, which makes the most sense. But sometimes, like, when you look at this category, they sometimes would not go with the one that makes the most, like, specifically, a subject that would be very relevant in the current status, like, mainly in the short films specifically, that they might not go with it. So, like, they could go something like Anuja or The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent for live-action short instead of Alien. Like, a good example is, like, for the 2018 ceremony, with the Caleb Elementary made the most sense to win Best Live-Action Short after the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, but they went with The Silent Child instead. So a movie like Death by Numbers, which makes the most sense, would be very relevant. But there hasn't really been something like that we have not seen, even though there have been some massive incidents. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's just like the one that makes the most sense is just the voters are not going to go with it. And one thing the documentary short category is notable for giving a lot of wins to, subjects involving around music, as we saw last year with The Last Repair Shop. So I think it's a toss-up between instruments. I wouldn't say it's Instruments of a Beating Heart, even though Eric Nayar is double nominated, because this guy is not also, unless this is a woman, Eric is not just nominated for short for Instruments of a Beating Heart, but is also nominated for documentary feature for Black Box Diaries. So the fact that this person's listed twice in 2 different categories, it would make the most sense, but I'm going to go with The Only Girl in the Orchestra as the obvious choice, because it kind of makes sense as like a female empowerment movie that a lot of voters would go intention, especially a lot of women voters. And now we come into the massive debatable category where Emilia Pérez is at the moment. And I would not be surprised if this is going to be the first category to be presented at the Oscars, Best International Feature. This is the first time ever we have 2 movies nominated for both Best Picture and Best International Feature the same year, with I'm Still Here probably being the more acclaimed movie than Emilia Pérez. But, as we saw, Emilia Pérez has beat I'm Still Here throughout the season. If I'm Still Here would have won the BAFTA, it would have made the most sense. But the fact that it got 13 nominations, and the fact that it's still unbeatable, and probably a lot of directors and actors that do support the movie, despite of all the controversies, I'm gonna go with the safe bet and saying Emilia Pérez does take this. And it would not be surprised if a lot of lazy voters would say, this is for us not nominating Anatomy of a Fall last year. Even though that should have been definitely Anatomy of a Fall was obviously why it was not submitted, because after I saw the movie, it got way too much English, so it would have been ruled ineligible. But so yeah, I'm gonna go with a safer bet with Emilia Pérez. I would say this could be the first category of the night if it's not one of the acting categories. Best Animated Featured Film. Now, we do have, of course, an open race here. Obviously, Flow won the Golden Globe and Best International Film at the Independent Spirit Awards. Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, won the BAFTA for Animated Feature and Children's Film, but I think we're going to go the safe bet with the WoW Robot here, not just winning the big weekend it had at Critics' Choice, sweeping the Annie Awards, even though they don't matter as much because they're now a joke nowadays, because they just go biased with one movie, and that's just it. And the Producers Guild win. With Wallace and Gromit taking the BAFTA, that kind of did show the Wild Robot more of a stronger candidate. And the fact that it's also nominated for 2 other categories, it also does show the strength. And it will finally give Chris Sanders his elusive Oscar. Best Production Design, Wicked. I don't think that's is no competition. Although The Brutalist would have made a lot of sense, but the fact The Brutalist didn't win the Guild is just something. So yeah, Wicked's obviously going to take this. And then we come into film editing, which obviously this is the one technical category that is not helping us throughout the season because the AC Eddies obviously are not going to happen until after the Oscars. And right now, it's between Anora and Conclave. I think after with the BAFTA win and with the SAG Ensemble win, I think we're going to go with Conclave here. For Best Sound, this could be a possibility to give Wicked another win, but I would have been a little bit more, convinced of Wicked winning if it did want SAG Ensemble, so I'm going to go with the safer bet and say Dune Part 2. Visual effects, Dune Part 2. Moving on. Cinematography, I do think The Brutalist easily is going to get this one. Even though Nosferatu won Critics' Choice, I just think The Brutalist makes the most sense. Unless Dune Part 2 takes it and wins all 3 technical categories, and then the nominations committee are going to be looking how stupid we were not nominating a lot more than we thought it was. On to Best Actor, even though Timothée Chalamet did win the SAG Award, I still think the voting was too late, and I do think Adrien Brody's still going to take it. Now, I know the AI controversy might potentially prevent him from winning this, since he is a previous winner, and the fact that A Complete Unknown also did well getting in for director, but The Brutalist does have more nominations, and I think a lot of the international voters that are not SAG voters will probably go with Brody. Best Actress is obviously the landmark in between Mikey Madison and Demi Moore. So, this is probably gonna, I would say, where we're going to be at. I know many people want to see Fernando Torres, but I'm just gonna say this. As much as many people in the comments will say this, she's third. She's not gonna easily take it. Besides, she has not competed with either Madison or Demi Moore yet. Or specifically, none of these 4 ladies. Madison did win the BAFTA, and it was just a perfect timing for her to win before the voting was closed. And then all of a sudden, Conclave got the ensemble win. If Anora did win Best Ensemble at SAG, I would have convinced and said Mikey Madison. And it is still a possibility. And the BAFTAs are notable for getting a lot of the leading categories correct and pulling in upsets of the veteran status, like Olivia Colman beating Glenn Close. And even like the veteran beating okay, I know this is odd with saying this, veteran versus somebody that has been kind of a bit in the acting industry, but not as much, like when Frances McDormand won for Nomadland over Carey Mulligan. And although it's kind of an odd one, Anthony Hopkins winning over a posthumous nomination for Chadwick Boseman on his final film role. So it could go either way. And one thing is the makeup and hairstyling category is something. If Wicked wins makeup and hairstyling, then we know Mikey Madison's winning Best Actress. If The Substance wins Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and if we see Anora lose Original Screenplay, it is still a possibility. If Anora is still the picture frontrunner, it would make sense because all the picture winners of this decade so far have gotten an acting win, including Nomadland, the first thing I go to why it makes sense for Madison to win this. And she even beat won the Independent Spirit Award, even though it's also a little bit of correlation a bit. I think, so it depends. It depends on how many non-SAG voters are in this versus how many SAG voters are in this. Because another thing is with SAG voters, some of them are just Oscar voters, some of them are just Emmy voters, and some of them are just both, and some of them might just not vote for, are neither Oscar or Emmy voters. So that's the good point. But I think because of the makeup category, I'm going to go with Demi Moore here. I know that if it's Madison, I would not be surprised, but it would be probably in the back of my head I should have said Mikey Madison, but I'm going to go with Demi Moore here. Best Director, I think the DGA pretty much kind of solidified with Sean Baker. Winning PGA and DGA kind of really did it. Even Baker won the Spirit Award, although Brady Corbet did won the BAFTA, but I don't think he will have a chance. If he does, and if it's just like Anora just wins Screenplay, and maybe Mikey Madison, still a possibility. And now we come into Best Picture. So, what I usually do for my final predictions, I usually go on by a ranking system, what I think is the least likely to win versus the most likely to win. And obviously it is between two films for the Best Picture prize. And it did got me a lot of thinking a bit throughout last night and throughout most of this day, even to now. But I think I might have gotten what might be depending on predicting what could be the results of what would be the least likely to win Best Picture versus the most likely to win. Now, one thing to note about when it comes to what, at least as long as you're a top 5 Oscar candidate, there are 4 categories you need to be at least almost to potentially win Best Picture, but more specifically to be at least a top 5 candidate. Directing, screenplay, editing, and at least an acting nomination. And there are 3 movies that have done that. Anora, The Brutalist, and Emilia Pérez. Starting up at number 10, I have Nickel Boys. It does have screenplay, but it doesn't have directing, not editing, and Anjuna Ellis-Taylor's not in for supporting actress, and the fact, like Women Talking in Past Lives, since it's the movie's only other nomination outside of Best Picture is screenplay, it is guaranteed the least likely to win. At number 9, I'm Still Here. If Nickel Boys did have like another nomination, I probably would have put I'm Still Here's the least likely. But it does have a chance to win the Best International Feature category. It does have an acting nomination for Fernando Torres, but it wasn't even in the conversation for film editing, director for Walter Salles, and it's very odd it's not in the adapted screenplay lineup. Now looking at it, it would have been something in place like over maybe Sing Sing, because Sing Sing didn't get the picture nomination, but even though many people would say Emilia Pérez or Complete Unknown because they're both music films, but yeah, but it has a chance to win. It does have an acting nod, but since it doesn't have the 3, and the fact that this is its only Best Picture appearance throughout the season, like Drive My Car, yeah, I don't think it's not going to happen. Even though, it does have more nominations than just one other nomination more so than Nickel Boys, but at least one of them is an acting category and one that has a potential chance to win. At number 8, Dune Part 2. It's very odd that I have to say that because it did not do well. Yeah, it is probably going to win easily visual effects and maybe for sound if it does not go to none of the music movies, except for, obviously not The Wild Robot. But obviously it didn't show up for directing, film editing, and adapted screenplay. That's just odd. But yeah, it's just like almost the awards body saying, oh, we're going to do the Return of the King present to Dune Messiah. Unless Dune Messiah is not that great, then the Academy's going to regret underperforming Dune Part 2. I mean, if it wasn't for the strikes, I think Dune Part 2 definitely would have done better nominations-wise, now thinking of it. At number 7, I am going with A Complete Unknown. It does have directing, it has 3 acting nominations and adapted screenplay, and Chalamet could win Best Actor, but it doesn't have film editing, and if it doesn't win Chalamet, it's going to go home empty-handed. So, And the fact that it's just, like, not a movie for, like, the general people, like, general critics specifically, even though it is a big audience hit, it's just, like, the only chance it has win is Chalamet and maybe Sound, because I think it did one at the Sound Guilds, I believe. It's just, like, what is this going to win? And, yeah, so, and the fact that it's not a movie that a lot of general people don't like, and the fact that even though it has appeared not everywhere for Best Picture, it's just, like, it doesn't have a chance to win anything. At number 6 is Wicked. If it did want SAG Ensemble, I probably would have put it at number 5. But since it didn't, and I do think it would still have the 2 technical categories it won, but it didn't get in for Screenplay, and it didn't get in for Directing for John M. Chu, which is odd after he won Critics' Choice. But I almost feel like Wicked for Good will probably be more in the top 5 for next year, so... but I do think it is probably more likely to be a candidate to win more so than a complete unknown. Unless if Chalamet wins Best Actor, then I think Wicked would probably go down to number 7. At number 5, The Substance. It does have directing, it does have screenplay, it does have an acting nod with Demi Moore, who is potentially more likely going to win if the makeup and hairstyle category would do it, but it's not up for film editing, and it hasn't had a Best Picture winning presence. Like, it's probably the one that is the least likely out of the top 5, I would say, that has a chance to win. Like, the only one that doesn't have a picture win under its name, because it didn't win the Drama Globe, it didn't win Critics' Choice, it wasn't nominated at BAFTA for Best Picture, and it could potentially go home at, well, except for makeup, it could potentially win for screenplay and for Demi Moore, so we'll see how the results go, but I do think it is that in that 5th place slot, and there are some members of the Academy that have against the horror genre in general, so, but I do think it would be in the 5th place spot at the moment. But then again, a complete unknown, Wicked, and The Substance, I do think all 3 of them could rotate depending on the results. At number 4, Emilia Pérez. This is where I have it here. It has everything it needs. It is the most nominated film, and it is most likely going to win for Zoe Saldana, original song, and potentially for an international feature, depending on how much the hate the movie has gotten. It did win the Golden Globe for Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, but the backlash the movie has gotten, of course, and the only award that Emilia Pérez has done well in the industry awards other than international feature is song. It is Saldana. That's it. If it did want SAG Ensemble, controversially, I would have considered it a little bit more higher, but it could either go, it at least is going to walk away with 2 or 3 wins. Even though it would definitely lose 10 Oscars, I do think it will probably be in the 4th place spot, depending on how much hate the movie has gotten. Even though many people think we'll go home empty-handed, it's not going to. At number 3, The Brutalist. It does have the Golden Globe for Motion Picture Drama. Brady Corbet did got BAFTA, and it's a possibility he could win. Adrien Brody is definitely in the conversation for Best Actor, and like Emilia Pérez, it does have the nominations it needs to be a top 5 candidate, but it just doesn't have... It needed to win PGA or DGA, and since it didn't, the only best performance it did was the BAFTAs, and there could be a lot of BAFTA precursors that could come through it, but probably not for directing. And if Chalamet wins, then Brody would be in a little bit of trouble. But then I think the Brutalist might have underperforms. I still think it will go home away with something, because it's not going to go home away with lose 10 nominations. But if it's like if Chalamet won Best Actor, I might put the Brutalist. Like the result could be the Brutalist might be at number 4, and Emilia Pérez would be at number 3. And now we come into the top 2. Between the PGA and DGA win with Anora versus the BAFTA and SAG Ensemble win with Conclave. So, the thing about it is, last year the BAFTA showed a lot of, obviously matched all of the Oscar winners except for visual effects, and of course we're not counting the shorts and original song. And then SAG Ensemble has been more of the key category of telling us what is winning Best Picture. With the exception of The Trial of the Chicago 7, all of the picture winners of the decade won SAG Ensemble. Coda, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Oppenheimer. So, and as we've been seeing, we are almost now kind of like, could be in potential pattern. Now, Anora does have everything, but it's been on a very bumpy ride throughout the entire season. It got shut out of the Golden Globes. It didn't win SAG Ensemble. And it's just like, and it kind of really went bumping at the BAFTAs as well, only winning for Mikey Madison in casting. And it has trouble winning the screenplay category. Baker didn't win at BAFTA. It's just like, and Madison obviously does have BAFTA in the spirits, but she didn't win SAG, and Anora didn't win for Ensemble. And there might be a lot of people that might just not like the movie. And then for Conclave, it won the BAFTA for Best Picture, just in time, like 2 days before Oscar voting closed. It won the SAG Ensemble, and as we saw with Oppenheimer last year, like, that kind of just shows, oh, they just will go with the Best Picture winner. And with how the BAFTAs and SAG kind of matched up a bit last year of predicting the picture winner, it could happen. But the problem is, Edward Berger is not in for Best Director. The second time for him. So, and Conclave is obviously guaranteed going to win Adapted Screenplay and Film Editing. And I have Anora winning Original Screenplay and Directing. The biggest key thing, if Anora wins Best Picture, it would have to win for Mikey, if it wins Screenplay, Directing, and Best Actress for Mikey Madison. But if Anora loses Original Screenplay, then there is a big question mark. I don't think that will happen, but I think it would either be if Anora loses Original Screenplay, or if Mikey Madison wins Best Actress, that will tell us where we're at. Because Anora's definitely going to win Director. It's not going to go home empty-handed. I think, yeah, Directing is probably the easiest one, the most likely win for Anora in that category. And it's very odd with Conclave winning the SAG Ensemble, and if it wins Best Picture, this is so odd. A movie about a conclave wins Best Picture around the same time of the potential we could be around the final days of Pope Francis. Because Pope Francis, obviously, as of this February 24th recording, he is still in the hospital. And it's so odd that, is Hollywood going to predict the next conclave and actually predict Pope Francis's death? Because if Conclave wins Best Picture, Pope Francis is going to die. Not in a bad way, I'm saying, but I think it is almost like Hollywood predicted Pope Francis's death. Or if he dies before the Oscars or dies after the Oscars, I don't know if it would be the day of the Oscars, but Pope Francis is nearing on his final days because he has been in the hospital for over a week. And as a Catholic, as somebody who's also been interested in the college, has an interest subject in the College of Cardinals and the build-up for a next conclave, even though I've not been thinking about Pope Francis's death, it's just like, with how many cardinal electors would participate in it, it's just odd where we're at right now, with Conclave winning SAG Ensemble, and if it wins Best Picture at the time of Pope Francis's final days. So with that said, based on how I've done my predictions, at number 2, I have Anora, since I don't have it winning for Mikey Madison. And for me, I am predicting at number 1, Conclave. And the thing about it is, we're almost looking like we're going to be in a pattern here, because we have been now seeing, like, it's been now not that common now that a movie wins picture without the director getting nominated, because directing is not a key category anymore to win Best Picture, not even getting nominated, because Green Book managed to and Coda did. And it's almost like every 3 years. Like, if we start with Green Book, 3 years later, Coda wins picture without a directing nomination. And now we're 3 years after Coda wins, Conclave would win picture without Berger and for director. And I think since obviously All Quiet on the Western Front was close of winning Best Picture 2 years ago, I do think they're probably one to actually give an Edward Berger movie a Best Picture win. So with that said, I think with the BAFTA voting overlapped a bit, obviously not all the BAFTA winners are going to overlap this year, but with the BAFTA win for Best Picture just in time before voting closed, and with the SAG Ensemble win being the big key category, I think, throughout the award season, and I think throughout this decade, except for 2020, that's where I'm going to go. I think Conclave will win Best Picture and do an Argo route, winning Screenplay and Editing without the director nominee. And another thing is, this would be kind of interesting, because the last 2 times Ralph Fiennes was nominated, both of his films won Best Picture. with the Schindler's List and the English Patient. And since Fiennes is nominated, it makes sense to go 3 for 3 with Conclave winning picture, even though Fiennes is stuck in third place for Best Actor. Obviously, he had been in a picture-winning film with The Hurt Locker, and although The Grand Budapest Hotel didn't win, but specifically, if he is nominated, the movie he's in wins Best Picture. So that's the reason why I'm going with Conclave. And that wraps up my final Oscar predictions and the last award show video of the 2024 movie award season, or 2025, honoring the films 2024, you get it. So if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. If you want to follow my future award show journey for next season, follow me on the Awards Expert app. We'll be back. I will be back for the next awards season run for starting in the end of August, when I will do the Big 8 predictions once again. But we can finally put the season off to a close unless something bizarre happens. Well, best of luck, everybody. It would be time to find out who wins the Oscar.